Howdy guys, moving on. Just wanted to orient you as to the motivational interviewing aspect of the art of neurology. Motivational interviewing, just to give you kind of a definition, is a collaborative and conversational approach to helping people achieve the results that they want. Now, at first you learn what it is, you learn the principles. We're going to talk about those a great deal. But it was developed back in actually the 80s by a couple of psychologists who were heavy in the field of helping people to overcome addictions actually and achieve the life that they wanted. Now, they were very effective and they started looking at exactly what they were doing and putting labels on what they were doing, and they realized that they had something to work with. They were developing tools. We're going to move into those tools briefly, but part of what they were noting that they were leveraging was people's interest in moving forward in the first place. So these are what we call intrinsic values that we all have. I mean, we all want to have autonomy, we all want to have mastery over our own lives, and we all want to have a sense of relatedness with the people that we are working with, and we all have desires. So those are what you would call intrinsic values that we all have. You can just depend on everybody having these. Now, when you have this information and then you understand something called ambivalence, I mean, we all think about a life that we want versus a life that we have. And we kind of wonder, should I do the work of getting there? And what's the value? How much is it worth? And so we kind of toggle here and there, waiting to be inspired by one another. And so that's what motivational interviewing is about. It's helping each other to have the internal conversations and sometimes external to help us move over our own ambivalence. So there are some principles about motivational interviewing we'll go over. The one is that we have to have compassion with one another. We have to talk with one another with a sense of acceptance, a sense of collaboration. That's the third. And then the fourth is evocation. None of us knows as far as we can go. None of us knows how high we can fly. But we have to figure that out. So those are the principles of motivational interviewing. In terms of the critical practices of motivational interviewing, if we don't establish really a sense of a rapport, then nothing's going to happen. So we have to engage. So engaging, number one, is the first critical practice of motivational interviewing. Then we have to develop some sort of a focus, really a sense of what is important, okay, what is primarily important. Then finally, what we'll want to do is evoke from patients, so a sense of evoking where we want to go and how far we want to go. And then the sense is planning. We know what we want to work on, and we know what we want to focus on. We know the order, the path mapping, and that's also what we call evoking. But now the planning, and so this is the final critical practice of motivational interviewing. So now the next is that we have to sort of generally get a sense that there's a certain communication style, a set of communication styles. Now in medicine, we're typically sort of doing more directing, and historically we've done that. Traditionally, it gets us so far in certain circumstances, but when we have chronic health conditions and when we definitely depend on having people work with us and working with people, then we need to be more guiding. Okay, so what we're doing is actually helping. We're really helpers when it really comes right down to it, and guiding the people that are looking for guidance, more technical guidance. Let's say so we're co-piloting, if you will, but the patient's in the driver's seat. Once we have a sense of that broad outline that we just gave, then we can start talking about the tools of motivational interviewing. I'm going to go through several of them briefly. An open-ended question is a tool that we use. Reflective listening is another tool that we use. Affirmations, an important tool. Summarizing statements, of course. Requesting permission, believe it or not, is a tool of motivational interviewing, a very powerful tool, and I use it all the time. Exploring confidence, exploring importance and interest, actually. Eliciting change talk. Motivational interviewing has a lot to do with talking and collaborating and conversationally doing so. And so when we facilitate change talk, we're helping a patient to put himself in the position that he really talks himself into the change that he wants. A ready to change ruler is something that we'll talk about during our course. There's something called normalizing. We'll talk more about these. Normalizing particularly works when we feel like we're all alone and we feel like nobody is struggling along with us. We'll talk deeply about that. There are statements supporting self-efficacy that we'll talk about during our course. And then there's something called the Colombo approach, and finally, then there is something called it's called the therapeutic. It's a little unusual, a therapeutic paradox, and we'll talk about that more in depth. It's one of the more challenging ones that we will go over. But you'll learn these techniques, you'll hear about all of them, and then by the end of the course, the actual art of neurology, you'll be very facile and the work will be different. Okay guys, keep winning. See you in the next video. These are just orientations about what we're going to talk about in the actual course when you're working on your own certification. Take care.